Good morning, everyone. So our topic today is about communicative language teaching. So what is CLT? Communicative language teaching is a set of principles about teaching, including recommendations about methods and syllabus, where the focus is meaningful communication, not structures, use not usage. So ano ba ang goal ng CLT for students? So, communicative language teaching looks at language use and context, both linguistic and situational. So, not only for the language that is used, but also who uses it and what circumstances. So, students' motivation to learn comes from their desire to communicate a meaningful ways about meaningful topics. The goal of CLT is for learners to acquire communicative competencies in the target language. While grammatical competence is important, the fact that many learners can have a strong knowledge of grammar rules and still not be effective communicators show that grammatical competence does not equal proficiency. Let's define the four main terms related to language teaching. So the first one is approach. It's a set of assumptions dealing with the nature of language, learning, and teaching. An approach is a theory about language learning or even philosophy of how people learn in general. So they can be psychologically focused such as behaviorism or cognitivism. So they can be also be based on older philosophies such as idealism or realism. Approaches are fuzzy and hard to define because they are broad in nature. An example of an approach that leads to a method would be the philosophies of scholasticism, faculty of psychology, or even perennialism. So each of these philosophies encourage the development of the mind in the way of a muscles. Train the brain and a person will be able to do many different things. The next one is method, an overall plan for a systematic presentation of language based on a selected approach. Means a method is an application of an approach and the context of language teaching. An example of a method is the grammar translation method. This method employs the memorization of various grammar rules and the translation of second language materials to the student's native language. So students will be able to develop the intellectual capacity to understand the new language through a deductive process of acquiring the rules of the language. So the purpose is not to critique this method, but to show how it was derived from the approach that the mind needs to be trained through intellectual exercises to be able to accomplish something. So the next one is procedure. Procedure, an ordered set of techniques to execute a method. Procedures are the steps-by-steps measure to execute a method. So these steps-by-steps measures are called techniques and will be discussed the next. So the last one of related to language teaching is the techniques. So techniques is certain practices and behaviors to implement a procedure according to a method. So techniques is a single activity that comes from a procedure. So any one of the steps of the procedures less above qualifies as a technique. So naturally, various methods employs various techniques. So that's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Russell Golpeo, your discussant for this afternoon. So the topic that I will going to discuss will be principles of communicative language teaching. So the first will be make real communication the focus of language learning. So by means of real communication, we learn from our languages. So the second will be provide opportunities for learners to experiment and try out what they know. So this opportunity will also help learners to discover their capacity of thinking. So the third one will be provide opportunities for learners to develop both accuracy and fluency. So this opportunity again helps learners to progress their quality of being correct or precise and their condition of being fluent. The number 4 is link the different skills such as speaking, reading, and listening together since they usually occur so in the real world. So the fifth, let student induce or discover grammar rules. So by means of discovering of grammar rules, learners won't able to feel any pressured. So the sixth will be tolerant of learners' error as they indicate that the learner is building up his or her communicative competencies. So by means of tolerance, if they do errors, they can boost their confidence to do more and discover more. So 7, lastly, is focus more on achieving communicative competencies with student without neglecting grammatical competence on fluency without neglecting accuracy. So by means of this, it's one way to start the easy sentences to be constructed.
Advantage and disadvantage of communicative teaching learning. Before we start, my name is Ravi Pitan and I am a part of group 5 and I am discussion for today. Advantage. First, the advantage of communicative teaching learning is communicative approach is much more pupil orientated because it is based on pupil needs and interests, and it is also needs and interests of the students. And communicative method is considerably more pupil centered. And second, the advantage of communicative teaching learning is the communicative approach seek to a personalized and localized language and adapt it to interests of pupil. So the communicative method aims to personalize and localize language while also tailoring it to the interest of the student, and learning or learners are always more likely to remember meaningful language. And the three is seek to use authentic resources, and and that is more interesting and motivating for children. So makes an effort to use genuine sources, and also children will find the more engaging and motivating in this source or in this room, like an effort to authentic resources. Number 4, children acquire grammar rules as the necessity to speak, so it more proficient and efficient. And it is also grammar principle are learned as of necessary in order for children to talk more proficiently and efficiently. And disadvantage of learning of communicative teaching learning is first, it pays insufficient attention to the content in which teaching and learning take place, and it does not pay enough attention to the content in which teaching and learning occur. And also the second is communicative approach often seem to the interpreted as if the teacher understands the student, we have good communication. But native speaker for the target language can have great difficulty understanding student. And last, the disadvantage of communicative learning teaching is approach focus on influency but not accuracy, and those not focus on effort reduction, but instead creates a situation where learners are left using their own device or own understand to solve their communication problem. Then those they may produce incoherent, grammatically incorrect sentence. And this is a advantage and disadvantage of communicative learning teaching, and that's all.